Hi, I'm John DeDakis. I'm a novelist, a writing coach, a manuscript editor, and a former editor on CNN's The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer. You're one to one with me, and I'm one to one with Roger BelAir, who is his background is banking, but he's passionate about pickleball. So passionate that he's brought it to, and he's helped bring it to about 40 prisons around the country. So, Roger, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here on One to One.
Well, thank you, John, and it's great to see you again. It's been a
It's good
while.
good to see you. So, tell me about this whole idea of bringing pickleball to prisons. How did that come about?
Well, pickleball, I mean, almost everybody's heard of it now. All right.
Right.
But you go back a few years and people hadn't. I started playing it in 2010, really enjoyed it, got to know the founder, and really fell in love with the sport. But what happened was in 2017, my wife and I are watching 60 Minutes, and Leslie Stahl had a segment on Sheriff Tom Dart, who does his best to run Cook County Jail in Chicago. And as you can imagine what a challenge that is. I mean, they got like 80,000 people that flow through there every year. And in watching the piece, the guys are just kind of sitting around watching TV or playing cards. And I said to my wife, I said, they should be playing pickleball. They get exercise. Um, they've learned some life skills like thinking about mistakes and learning from different consequences, teamwork. And I got a polite nod from my wife. A few minutes passed, and I'm still watching the piece. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to write Sheriff Dart, who runs the place, and offer to go back there. I'll bring all the equipment, pay for all the expenses, and teach those guys pickleball. And her response was, well, she comes from a media background. She says, well, I know your intentions are good, but don't be disappointed if you don't hear from Sheriff Dart. He's a busy guy, and maybe he's never even heard of pickleball.
Right.
And what I found out, he had not heard of pickleball. He gets this letter, reads it, puts it on the side of his desk. But that night over dinner, I understand, he says to his family, he's got three kids, I think. I got this letter from this guy in Seattle, something about balls and pickles, and he wants to come back. He wants to come back and teach the inmates. And Sheriff Darcy hears from a lot of kooky people, and he just didn't know anything about it. And his 8-year-old daughter puts her hands on her hips and said, "Dad, I'll tell you about pickleball." So
Really?
that, if it hadn't been for that little girl, we wouldn't be talking today.
So he responded to you, and how difficult was it to get into the prison that first time?
I'm sorry, you broke up when you asked the question. I didn't hear it.
How difficult was it to get into the prison that first time?
Well, he can pull a few strings,
Well, that's true.
So he set, yeah, so he set everything up. But I have to admit that I'm flying back there, and I'm on the airplane, and I'm 70 years old, not quite that old, but I'm saying, what in the world am I doing? I mean, I've never been inside of a jail before or a prison, and I had my car towed once because it was illegally parked, but that's the closest I ever came. And as I sat outside the prison, and boy, this place is really huge. Um, my heart's up in my throat, and I go through a clearance, and you do that type of thing. And I found myself standing in front of about 25 young men. All had been charged with either murder or attempted murder.
Were you nervous?
Of course. And
Why?
well, most of them had been charged with murder or attempted murder. So, you know, I I thought I'd just start by giving them a little background about the game and how it started. And none of them, John, had heard of pickleball. Arms are crossed, they're looking around the room. And I'm saying, boy, this is not working. I mean, I can't even make eye contact with these guys. Um, Not knowing what to do, I thought of my wife, I thought of my dog. I, I said, well, let's go to the course. And so we went down to the gymnasium. We had taped out temporary courts, put up temporary nets, gave them some balls. And I would say within about 15 minutes, that's about how long it took. they turned into these hardened individuals who likely murdered somebody or tried to murder somebody to like third graders out on the playground. I
Right.
mean, they just absolutely fell in love with it. They knew nothing about the game. They're just trying to hit this darn wiffle ball back and forth over the net. And I say
Why do you suppose they were so enamored with it in such a short time?
most people are. You know, I've taught over 4,000 people, and I'm absolutely amazed is almost everybody loves this game. I say 1 or 2, 3% maybe says, you know, I like it, but you know, I got bad back or I can't do it. You know, that type of thing. But I would say over 95% of the people say, I want to do this again.
No
I'm going
kidding.
to go out and buy a paddle. I'm going to get involved. And after I've taught, you know, an hour and a half session, they just, you know, that's the reason. You know, it's not only the fastest growing sport right now in the country. You know, the newspaper in Boston had a headline. It's the fastest growing sport in the history of America. I
Wow.
mean, that's what type of momentum this sport has.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I lettered in tennis in high school. I
Yeah,
used to play tennis all the time.
yeah,
My feet are bad now, so I don't play tennis. I love tennis, but I've
right.
never tried pickleball. I don't know.
Oh
I
my.
mean, I kn- one of these days you and I are going to have to play pickleball.
We
Uh,
absolutely are.
but I mean, I'm not a good runner anymore. So does that
You
matter?
don't have, no, you don't have to be. Some people play the game or they try to play it like it's miniature tennis. It's actually more like ping pong on steroids.
Okay.
All right. When you play tennis, you know, maybe you play doubles, but an awful lot of the games one on one.
Oops, I lost you, Roger. We're talking with Roger BelAir. He is a former banker, and he'll be getting his signal back in just a minute, I hope. There you are, Roger.
All right.
I don't,
So
yep. Whoops.
so
There
let me
you go.
back up a little bit. I said that you know tennis is often played by singles,
Right,
and you know and it's if you have a great serve, you're going to win a lot of games. All right. And this is a lot more like ping pong on steroids.
right,
It's played on a badminton court, so it's about one third the size of a tennis court, and almost over 90% of the games are doubles.
okay,
So you're only covering a small part of the area. So that's why it's more like ping pong on a steroid. It's a rally sport, and the ball going back and forth, as compared to tennis, which you know is maybe hit 3, 4, 5 times, and it's more of an offensive sport.
right. And
And that's part of the reason so many people can do it. They can't play tennis.
there's a no man's no a no sort of a no fly zone near the net, right? So you can't get right up on the net and smash it.
Yeah, you know the game only has 3 rules, but when I teach in prison, I talk about 4 rules. All right, and what that is rule number one: you got to serve underhanded cross court.
Okay.
Okay,
Yep.
and and that just makes it easy to start the game. And what would happen is the serving team would run up and they smash the ball. So they said, we got to do something here to make this more fair. So that created rule number two. And rule number two is the ball has to bounce once on either side. Okay? So you
So
serve it, it bounces over.
you can't hit it before you can't hit it before it hits the ground.
That's exactly right. When the ball comes back, you cannot hit it before it hits the ground.
I see.
All right. So that's rule number two. And rule number three came about because a guy by the name of Dick Brown was so good that he would run up and he would totally dominate the net. He'd take over. And so they wanted to send this the sport started on Bainbridge Island. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to send Dick back to Seattle, but he loved this game and he wasn't interested in going anywhere. So they said, we need to create a rule that would negate somebody that's so good like Dick is. And so that led to a no volley zone. In other words, you can come up to within 7 feet of the net. And if you're on the outside of that, you can volley the ball. But if not, you cannot step into that no volley zone and volley the ball. All right. And so it's a great equalizer to create a rally sport. You
You
can
would
have the
think,
ball.
okay, I'm thinking strategically now, and I'm thinking though that if I can lob the ball over their heads, then I've got a better chance of scoring.
Boy, do you sound like a tennis player.
I know.
Well, and here's why that doesn't work too much.
Oh
You're
God.
playing on a badminton court.
Yeah.
All right. You only have 22 feet. So on tennis, that would be great if that was, you use that logic. But what happens when you're playing pickleball is the opponent's already 7 feet back from the net.
Hmm.
You lob it too short and they have an overhead smash. You lob it too deep and it's out of bounds.
Yeah, but you can't have an overhead smash.
You you can have an overhead smash anywhere except for those 7 feet next to the net.
Oh, but it still has to bounce.
No, it only has to bounce once, John, when the ball comes back after serving.
Oh, then it's
You play it just like tennis.
okay, got it. All right. And
Got
and
it?
how does the scoring go? Like
That's
badminton?
yeah. It's more like volleyball, and it's a little bit confusing. And I tell people that's the hardest part of the game. You got to play to 11, and you have to win by two. So it's a little bit confusing because you only get a point when your team is serving.
Right.
All
Okay.
right. So it's a little bit confusing, but everybody figures it out. And I tell people by the time they play the third game, you got it down.
And so let's say that you're serving and you lose the point, then the other team gets a chance to serve, and they don't get a point when they get the serve, they get a point when they're serving.
That's exactly right. But both players on a team get to serve. So if I started serving and our team faulted, then my partner would serve until faulting, and then it goes to the other side. But basically, you have the concept down.
Okay. So I have heard that people are, I mean, obviously I've seen pickleball a little bit, but one of the
Yeah.
things I've heard is that people who may not be pickleball players, but live in communities where pickleball is played. You know where I'm going with this.
Oh
And
yeah,
that
I
and
sure
that's
do.
the noise.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
there is that ever going to change? I mean, it's apparently a pretty obnoxious sound. Uh,
Well, it's a ping sound, and the biggest complaint about pickleball is the sound factor, and the second biggest complaint, and of course the sound factor comes from the people that are living right next door.
right.
And the second thing they complain about the most is why do people laugh so much?
Well,
I've
because
heard
they're
that.
having fun. They're
Yeah,
having fun.
why do people make so much noise out there? Why are they laughing so much? They don't laugh at, if we happen to be sitting next to a tennis court, but they sure do at pickleball.
Well, and so what's the answer to that? Why are people laughing?
Well, because they're having so much fun. Yeah.
Okay, but what is it that's fun?
Well, it's a rally sport. You play with a partner. I knew the owner quite well, and I like to say friends are not made, they're found. You can sit next to somebody for 20 years and never get close to them. You can
Right,
meet somebody at a party and you just hit it off.
right,
Barney McCullum and I just hit it off, and he was just a great friend. And what he said about this, it says pickleball is the most social sport ever created.
hmm,
And I said, really? And he said, think about it, Roger. Because what happens is you go on the court, you play with three other people, the game will last 12 minutes or so. And
right.
then you go to the sidelines and you wait until your turn comes up again so you can go back on the court. Well, you form all these casual relationships where it's all on a first name basis, but it's all about getting exercise and having fun. And pickleball is one of those sports, John, where almost everybody can do it.
Right.
A couple of years ago, the best woman player in the world was 14.
Hmm,
14.
yeah.
And I played with a guy that's 93,
Okay.
if you
Okay.
can believe it.
Yeah.
You know, eh, I said to him, I said, Bob, pickleball keep you young? He thought for a second. He said, not really, Roger. What keeps me young is my 72-year-old wife.
Okay, back to prisons.
All
Um,
right.
Based on your experience doing this for the last 7 years or so,
Uh-huh.
what has been the actual impact, not only in prisons, but in within the last 7 years? Some of these guys have gotten out and they're
Yeah.
back in the community. So, what effect has pickleball had on their on the recidivism rate, or in terms of how it's impacted an individual inmate as they go back into society?
Well, where do I start? All right. And maybe I'll start by saying the number one thing, as far as I'm concerned, is inmates enjoy this so much they want to play. And there's a new rule on the inside, and that's if you get into trouble, you can't play.
Mm,
So disciplinary problems are way down. All right. And everywhere I've introduced the game, that's exactly what's happened because it's a motivating tool. It's a stick rather than a carrot.
right.
And that's just really terrific. Um, I'll just say another example of what happens as far as breaking down barriers. I was
Mhm.
back to Chicago 3 times. The last time I was there, a sports reporter for USA Today was there. Do a piece for the sports page. Calls me up a couple of days later and says, I don't know how to tell you this, Roger, but it's not going to be on the sports page. And my heart dropped.
Yeah,
I said, oh, they killed the story. It was a
yeah,
great story, I thought. I told my nosy neighbor, I told, I'm going to have an egg on my face. I told the guys at the gym. He kind of chuckled and he said, well, the editors read the piece and they're going to put it on the front page
front page of USA Today.
of USA Today on Friday, the busiest day of the week. In
Wow.
that piece, there's a picture of me sitting on the bench with one of the detainees, the guy's been charged with attempted murder. As that picture's taken, he said, Roger, look out there on the courts. Well, I look out and I see a lot of guys, what I call S&P, which is swing and pray the ball goes over the net. And he says, you don't understand. We have 20 major gangs here in Chicago. They have 100,000 members. They outnumber the cops 10 to 1. He says you got opposite gang members out there playing with and against each other. They wouldn't talk to each other before pickleball.
Wow. Wow. What
A
are
story
there
like
any
that.
are there any stories that you've heard about guys who've actually gotten out and what impact pickleball has had on their life back on the street or back out of prison?
Well, I haven't for this reason. I've been encouraged when I go inside, is most of the guys are trying to turn their life around.
Right.
But I've been encouraged not to give them my email or try to stay in touch
Mhm.
because you just never know. Okay.
Right. Right.
So I'm there for them. I'm there totally for them, and I'm not trying to build relationships. But here's what was told to me by the head of recreation for California. And California has the second largest inmate population of anywhere in the country behind Texas. All right. Last week I was at 5 different prisons, and we can talk about that if you want. But here's what she said to me. She says, we know what an impact this is having on the inside. But she says, Roger, I think the biggest impact is once they get out. And, I arched my back a little bit and said, why do you say that?
Yeah.
What we're doing is reducing disciplinary problems, and not only that, but breaking down barriers. And she says, here's why. The recidivism rate in this country is about 65%. That's terrible.
Mhm.
Norway is like 22%. So we've done a lot of research of why is ours so high and what has to happen to get somebody out and to stay out. And we know that there's 3 things that are really important. First of all, they need a job. Yeah,
Right.
sure. They need income. Yet 50% of all inmates are looking for work a year after getting out.
Mm.
Terrible. Second of all, they need support. Well, normally you think of support as, a family. Well, that's great if you come from a strong family. But some of these guys, and I say guys because 90% of all inmates are men,
Mhm.
their family's just kind of as messed up as they are.
Yeah.
But here's the third thing she said. They need community. They need community. Pickleball is a sport where they can grab a paddle, just pay $25. They can go to the local parks. They can make new friends. They can develop a new type of relationship with other people other than going back to where they came from in the first place.
Right.
So, in her opinion, and she's head of recreation for California, pickleball has more of an impact once people get out.
Okay. Okay. Now you founded, let me just bring this up on the screen. You founded an organization called PIC League, or the Pickleball for Incarcerated Communities League, picleague.org. Talk about that a little bit. What is that?
Well, I've been fortunate to have a fair amount of publicity and be on podcasts like yours. And what happens is people track me down and they say, Roger, I love pickleball. I can just imagine how much of an impact it's having on the inside. I got a prison that's within a half-hour drive from where I live, but I have absolutely no idea what to do, who to contact. Will you tell me what to do? And my response, John, is, well, yes, I like to tell people what to do. So here's the testimonials. Here's a sample letter. Write this to the warden. All right, include all these testimonials from like the warden at San Quentin and the deputy commissioner at Rikers Island, and talking about the benefits of it. And so it happened once, it happened twice, and it happened, a dozen times. And with a woman out of Connecticut, what we decided to do was form a nonprofit to support these people going on the inside. And so right now we're probably about 45 different prisons around the country
It's
in
amazing.
12 different states. But more, all right, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, you talked about what it was like standing in front of these inmates for the very first time 7 years ago.
Right.
Fast forward to now, you're still going to prisons, meeting with prisoners, introducing them to pickleball. Um, how are things now for you in that situation? Obviously, you're, not as nervous as you used to be.
Mhm,
What have you learned over the years in terms of interacting with these guys?
mhm. Well, first of all, I tell the same corny one-liners.
Right.
You know, if people laugh the first time around, they'll probably do a new audience. They'll probably laugh too.
Exactly. They haven't heard it. It's fresh for
Yeah,
them.
they haven't heard it. But when I go inside of prison now, it's different because originally when I started, nobody had heard of pickleball. All
Right.
right, I might be well be talking about tiddlywinks, but now when I go in, the rec supervisors post articles about me and articles about how wonderful pickleball is. And so frankly, and it's not me, it's what I represent, but I walk in and I'm a rock star. They
Really?
can't they can't wait. And again, it's not my ego talking, it's they can't wait to learn because they've heard so many positive things about it.
Wow. Wow. And so, I mean, that's just an elixir because you're working with people who really want to learn.
Well, as one inmate said to me, he says, Roger, I'm sure it's enjoyable for people on the outside. I'm sure they enjoy it. They really enjoy it. But inside, we really need it.
How often do these guys play?
Well, sometimes every day. Like in Connecticut, McDougal, which is the largest maximum security in New England, what they do is they play every week and they have a tournament on Friday. All
Wow.
right. And guys being guys, they really like to jab each other. The old one-liners. They really love to
Trash
look
talk.
forward to the tournament. Yeah, trash talk. Boy, am I going to kick your bottom this week?
Right.
That type of thing.
Uh-huh.
And it's so joyful for me to see that develop because all goes all the way back to behave yourself if you want to play.
Talk a little bit about your background. You've got an MBA, Master's in Business Administration. You were in banking for 10 years at Seattle First National, one of the biggest bank in the Pacific Northwest. You
Right.
rose to vice presidential level. What effect, if any, And I should add that you founded co-founded a company that focused on discounted mortgages. You've written a couple of books dealing with that. What impact, or what impact, or how, let me put it this way: how did your background in finance and banking, uh, in any way, affect bringing pickleball to the prisons, if at all?
Well, I don't know quite how to answer that. I have such a checkered background. My father used to say, Roger's a kid that can't keep a job. And I started out in banking, but I was driven, and I formed a partnership with a guy by the name of Nick Briney, Discount Mortgages. We were very blessed, and we ended up being profiled on the cover story of Money Magazine. Well, as you know, those type of things just change lives. All right. And when that happened, Doubleday came to me and said, how about writing a book? Write a book? Are you kidding? I don't even write my mother. Yeah, yeah, I can't write a book. But
Right.
I sat down, maybe you can relate to this. It was called a typewriter.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, there's a P, there's a C, you
Yeah.
know. And the manuscript turned out pretty well. It had a little bit of editing. It sold a lot. And they came back and says, geez, you're a former banker now. There's a lot of people that are really anxious about dealing with a banker. Would you write a book for that? And so I did. And then I ran into a guy at a party, and he said, what do you do? And I told him. And he said, let me introduce you to my agent. He says, I'm on a professional speaking tour. And he did. And you'll recognize this name. His name was Vince Lombardi Jr.
Okay.
Yeah, so Vince was the one that put me into, once again, it's easier to find a new audience than it is a new speech.
S-
Um,
Vince
but to answer
Lombardi,
your,
Vince Lombardi's son.
right, yeah.
Okay, got it.
But to answer your question about, I don't know how much it's impacted from one to the other, but somebody asked my business partner, who I had for 35 years, what's Roger going to do next? And he shrugged his shoulders and says, I don't know. But for that matter, Roger doesn't know either.
Well, that leads me to my next question, and that's, what is next for you? I mean, are you going to write a book about this?
I don't think so.
Why not? Why not?
Well, I've sold my life rights, and so there is a documentary under production, and he's been working on it for 18 months, and um, that's coming along great. All right, and it'll probably be out in, I'd say, 26.
Hmm.
So, but he also has the rights to a book as well as a feature film. And when the feature film is discussed, I say, I think Tom Cruise ought to play me. I mean, after all, yeah, a strong resemblance. We're the same height.
Well, you never know. You never
Yeah,
know.
you never know. Yeah.
Ah, my goodness. What haven't I asked that you'd like to expound upon?
Well, I think here's something that's really significant. I'm particularly close with the warden at San Quentin. He retired just last month, but he had a long career. All right.
Mhm.
And as you can imagine, for many years. And I first met him about a year and a half ago. And when I met him, he was enthused to bring this in. And I said I dealt with one of his lieutenants, of course, as far as setting things up. And I said, what about getting some staff involvement? I would think that that would help. I always try to do that. Any chance that we can get the corrections officers out there on the court, or maybe the warden? And the response came back of, Roger, San Quentin has more people on death row than any other place in the Western Hemisphere.
Mm.
Been around for 170 years. Never has a warden participated in any type of athletic event. All right. So, I passed, I just assumed it wasn't going to happen. But I, shared a little bit of the conversation with the warden. And when I went up there, and there's no place quite like San Quentin, I'll tell you. All right. I go in, I'm at the gates with a bunch of cameras and boom microphones and reporters, work my way to the court, and there's this guy at the net with a paddle. Who is it? The warden. First time in 170 years. Well, The officers see him out in the court. They say, well, why can't we play? They got out there too. I saw the warden 2 weeks ago, and we talked about my first exposure out there at San Quentin. And he shared with me, Roger, I've been in this position for a long time. One of the 5 highlights of my career was the day you introduced pickleball.
Wow.
Then we went on to talk. I want to make one more point. Is we talked about the importance of giving inmates something to do on the inside. And if you don't, how it erupts like a volcano.
Yeah.
He says the most popular athletic event is basketball. Many of the kids grew up playing it on the outside. But here's the drawback of basketball. It's dominated by the tall, the young, the athletic. Everybody else sits on the sidelines. But also what happens is the number of injuries that happen on the inside. It's a violent game.
Yeah.
So, some prisons want to eliminate it altogether, John.
Mm-hmm.
He said, Roger, I believe after watching pickleball for the last year and a half, that pickleball will become the #1 sport played in correctional facilities.
Incredible. Incredible. So if people want to get in touch with you, they can do it through your email address, which is belair@gmail.com.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear from anybody.
And I'm also going to throw up on the in a manner of speaking. I'm going to put this up on the screen. The Pickleball for Incarcerated Communities League, and the website is picleague.org. Roger, I've learned a lot, and I think I might actually try pickleball sometime. Because I loved tennis, and I wish I could play it now. I can't. And pickleball might be within reach if it's doubles.
Yeah, I hear that all the time, and I'll almost guarantee you that you'll get out there and you'll enjoy it.
Okay.
I'm often asked, do older people play it like in their 80s? And I laugh. I said, not only do they play it, but there's even tournaments. You have to be 80 to enter it.
Well, I'm not quite there yet. Yeah, it is. It's wonderful. I'm not quite there yet, but that is incentive. So you've done a lot to encourage me. So listen, Roger BelAir, thank you very much for being on One to One. I'm John DeDakis. You're One to One with me. And let me just put up my website there, just in case you want to get in touch with me as well. But Roger, this has been great. Thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and say hi to Candy for me.
I'll do that. It's been great to be here.
Okay.